I'm David Scandura.
I'm Justice Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is Porco Rosso the greatest movie ever made?
Or maybe I'm dead and life as a pig is the same thing as hell.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Oink, oink.
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I'm your host, David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host and man who wishes he could turn into a pig, Justice Burkett.
I have often expressed the desire that I want to be a piggy. I want to eat slop from a bucket, etc., etc. I want to wallow in my own filth. I just wish that it was acceptable for me as a human man to live life as a pig. Maybe that's not all it's cracked up to be, as this movie tells us. Maybe being a pig is like actually kind of like sad and like lonely, and maybe it's like maybe pigs are like very introspective, I guess, based on the experience of this pig in particular. Yes, pigs, beautiful animals.
Yes,
and yet I eat them, which is like a thing that I've like morally wrestled with.
Sure.
Anyway, so David, I am outnumbered by Scanduras right now.
Yeah.
So we should probably address that.
Yeah.
There is one more Scandura than there typically is in the room when we are recording this podcast.
Ladies, gentlemen, people of varying genders, this is my brother, Matthew Scandura.
Hello.
First relative guest on the podcast. First industry plant podcast guest, you could say.
The Scanduras are here and we are legion.
Yes. TGMEM is not immune to nepotism.
Do you think we're going to have the issue where people can't tell our voices apart?
I don't know.
Regular listeners to this podcast are used to hearing David's voice, but you do sound quite similar on account of being blood brothers.
Yes.
Relatives do occasionally get us mixed up, like on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. And you know what? If you can't tell our voices apart, fuck you, I guess.
People always tell me I sound like my dad. Do you think I sound like my dad? You met my dad.
I don't think so.
Yeah, everybody always says like my.
Me too.
When I'm on the phone with like my grandma or whatever, she'll like think it's my dad or whatever. Anyway.
But yes, Matthew has been a long-time listener of the show. You've been listening to every episode and like watching movies along. Every week, you're a little behind.
I am like 30 episodes behind, but yes.
Okay.
So I have a question because I knew this. David had mentioned this to me that you were watching along and listening to the show. Do you have a favorite movie that you have watched because of the podcast so far?
David had asked me this, and I don't remember if I had a good answer.
Okay.
Maybe The Reanimator.
Oh, hell
potentially.
Yeah.
It's just a weird, wild time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reanimator's a good one.
It's a good movie.
That's one of our like lowest performing episodes, which is
really
crazy to me because I'm like, that's a cult classic, people. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
But I guess it's, our listenership is more interested when we do shit like Crash and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. They're like all in for like the most fucked up shit we cover.
So this one's just going straight in the tank.
It's probably tanking.
I don't know. I feel like there's some crossover with your Lynch fans and your
That's true.
Cronenbergs and your Miyazaki fans.
He's an auteur.
Yeah.
An auteur. Also, our animated stuff. Like when we cover animated films, it actually does perform pretty well.
Oh, okay.
Our fans have two modes. One is like children's entertainment, and the other one is like, getting in a car crash and having a huge gaping wound in the back of your leg and like a guy fucking it. Like,
yeah.
Those are the two things they like to hear us talk about.
Matthew, how are you doing? And is there anything that you want to recommend?
I'm doing all right, hanging out for the holidays and just chilling and trying not to think about how I need to get back to working on my master's degree in a few days.
Yeah.
Anything to recommend? Went to see Nosferatu with you a few days ago. That was real good and fucked up in its own fun ways.
Nice.
Yeah.
I haven't caught it yet, but I'm like so fucking amped. I'm gonna be seeing it tomorrow.
It's good. It's a good time. Other than that, for better or worse, probably worse, most of my media consumption is watching streams on Twitch, which is just the hardest thing to recommend to anybody.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that, but I do have a good time there.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Justice?
Yeah, I'm doing good today. Feeling better than the last couple records. I'm chilling, and I don't really have any. I did actually have one thing to recommend, which is if you, like me, skipped it when it came out last year. I would recommend catching up and watching The Holdovers, which like had some buzz when it came out last year. I heard good things about it. I love Paul Giamatti. I have liked all of Alexander Payne's movies that I've seen, but I just like didn't get to the theater for that one. Hadn't caught it on streaming yet. And it was the holidays. We had kind of like the High Priestess Pod and I had a little bit of a lazy Christmas because we were both not feeling super well. So we kind of just like vegged out on Christmas Day. And the activity was watching The Holdovers. And it was a delight. It's like so funny, and also just like very beautiful and heartfelt, and like very visually like fun and interesting. Like Alexander Payne like really successfully replicates the aesthetic of a movie from the 70s, and I was like, shit like that. So yeah, if you like me missed it the first time, I would suggest giving The Holdovers a watch. I think it's on like Max right now. What about you, David? How you doing?
I'm doing good. We are at the satellite location of the TGMEM offices today. So we are joined by the Podcats.
Yes. Your cats are here.
One is very vocal.
Yes, and if you hear meowing in the background, that's why. In my experience, listening to other podcasts, a lot of the time cat meows will stay in because I think listeners like that. It lends the recording an air of authenticity. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We should just get Tortilla a mic.
Yeah, she always has things to contribute.
Did she watch Porco Rosso?
She watches every movie with me.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, I'm good. Finally, like, have my time off for the holidays. We are recording this before the end of the new year. So things will be coming out slightly out of order here.
Yeah.
But, I have the next week completely off from work, which is great. As far as stuff to recommend, I discovered an album from the 60s by an artist named Jackson C. Frank, who's a folk singer who worked with Paul Simon and had a very short-lived career and unfortunately just had a very sad, depressing life. And his debut album in the 60s, his self-titled debut album, is excellent.
Nice.
Just an amazing guitar player and a really great songwriter. So I would recommend that.
Folk musician with a tragic life, huh?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Like when he was a child, the furnace at his school exploded and killed 15 of his classmates.
Holy shit.
And he survived with like 3rd-degree burns.
Sorry, I shouldn't
and
laugh
PTSD.
at that, but that's fucking insane.
No, but that's how his life starts.
Right.
And then it just gets subsequently worse.
Just one of those people that seems cursed.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're one of those people, a great career to go into is singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Child tragedy does remind me the other thing I've been doing is reading It for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good, but also Steven writes just so many words.
Yeah.
Not all those words need to be in there, but it's good.
That was High Priestess Pod's verdict on It as well. Mm-hmm. She was like, there's too much of it. Like, it's a good story, but like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Does this need to be 1,400 pages?
Like, I've seen the movies. I know this character isn't coming back. I don't need to know their whole childhood.
Right, their entire backstory.
Yeah.
Like, what high school they went to and shit.
Did you make it to the child orgy yet?
No, I'm like a third of the way in, so little soon for that.
Oh, see, Steven builds up to that.
Yeah. From what I understand, like in the book, the adult timeline and the kid timeline are like happening concurrently, like in the book. And
they're kind of staggered.
In between, right, yeah. So because that's like the climax of the kid plot, my understanding is it doesn't happen until like pretty late in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about it.
We're here to talk about Hayao Miyazaki's Porco Rosso.
Porco Rosso. The Crimson Pig.
The sort of an underrated Ghibli film, I would say.
Kind of a black sheep, from what I understand in his filmography.
Yeah. So this is the first time we're talking about Japanese animation on the show.
Yeah.
We haven't done another Japanese animated film. And obviously, like, if you're gonna start somewhere, starting with Miyazaki is like the obvious, the obvious choice. This was a Miyazaki that I hadn't seen before, because I think, to your point, David, is like one of his less, not less well regarded necessarily, but it's just not one of the super buzzy ones.
Right. People latch on to Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, I'd say those are the big three. Yeah.
So I haven't seen this before. You hadn't seen this before?
I had never seen Porco Rosso before, yeah.
What's your experience with this, Matthew? Because I know you had seen it once before.
Yeah.
So this is my third time. I first saw it, I realized, almost exactly 10 years ago with some horror. But I was going through all of the films that Miyazaki had directed. And when I got to this one, I knew not as many people were crazy about it. And I watched it and had a good enough time. It's a little weird. It's kind of adult and kind of for kids. There's a weird mix of tones of like Saturday morning cartoon and also the rise of fascism in Italy.
Right.
And I was like, well, that was weird and interesting, but whatever. And then I just couldn't stop thinking about it for like the next week, which for whatever reason was not an experience I had with the rest of his films.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I just had this feeling like there's something else here that I'm not quite tapping into.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure that out. And so I knew I wanted to revisit it. And I finally did about a year ago and had just the exact same experience, not any closer to understanding what I was trying to figure out. So I brought this movie before you today because I needed an excuse to force two people to talk about this movie with me because I have not had that.
Yes, you just we need to do analysis on this so that Matthew can rest.
You need to be smart for this episode only.
We'll do our best.
And I think both of you are probably more experienced with Miyazaki films than I am. This is my fourth, and every Miyazaki film I've only seen once. I've seen Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, which I watched recently with you, Justice, and then now this.
I thought you saw Mononoke twice because we watched it once, and then I thought you watched it once on your own.
I don't think I've watched it again. But I think that one time that we watched it, I was a little tired, so I don't remember much of it.
You were the sleepy baby.
I was a sleepy boy, and it's a longer movie. But I feel like both of you guys have seen more Miyazaki than I have, right?
Probably. So I've seen the Miyazaki that I've seen Spirited Away multiple times. I've seen Kiki's Delivery Service, Howl's Moving Castle, this. I don't know. That might be it, because I've never seen Nausicaa. I've never seen Totoro or Princess Mononoke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that might be it.
Okay.
Which I think is that one less than you've seen?
Maybe.
But the ones that I've seen, like Spirited Away, I've seen probably close to half a dozen times, right? Because that was a big one when I was in like middle school, high school, that I would like go over to my friends' houses who were super into anime, and like we would always put on like Spirited Away or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen all the stuff he's directed at least once, a couple things twice, but there's some things he wrote but didn't direct that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanna delve more into his filmography, because like, no spoilers for my verdict on this movie, but like everything I've seen from him, I'm like, oh my god, like it's like there's just something about his style, man. It's like, first of all, it is bad to watch if you're sleepy. Because it is so soothing. It's like there's something so comforting, and it's just he taps into like a type of like vibe. His aesthetic, right, just makes me feel the closest that I can as like a 32-year-old man to like being a kid again at my parents' house, and just feeling completely safe. He like creates worlds that make you feel completely safe, completely at home,
cozy.
Yeah. And even in Porco Rosso, or a movie like Howl's Moving Castle, right, which is another kind of anti-war film that he has made. Even in those where there's something a little bit darker that he's dealing with, versus something like Kiki's Delivery Service, which is just nonstop good vibes, right? Even in those movies, it's like the world that the characters exist in feels so safe and so joyful and so like vibrant and full of life, and the darkness is always just kind of around the edges. Like it doesn't really like enter the story in a way that like breaks your feeling of safety, I feel like. And that's like a thing that I like severely fuck with about his movies. Like, it's like, I love fucked up shit. I love watching horror movies. I love watching, evil films, as I call them. But sometimes it is nice for a movie to just make you feel nice. And one of the things that I've like latched onto the most about Miyazaki is like his movies are some of the best art I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
At doing that, at just making you feel nice, and not making you feel nice in a way that is like overly saccharine and like kind of like sterilized good vibes. It's like very like deep, like introspective. He gives you a lot to think about, but it's always kind of like positive and optimistic,
Yeah.
And I fucking love that about him.
Yeah, I've been impressed with all of the Miyazaki films that I've mentioned, and I can see why people latch onto his stuff so fiercely, and he has the reputation that he does, and of course not just him, but all of his animators and
yes.
voice actors and musicians that work with him at Studio Ghibli. I can see why he has the reputation that he does. I think I love the atmosphere and the vibe of his films, but a lot of his films are mostly just kind of sitting in that atmosphere, and the structure gets a little loose.
Yeah,
and sometimes the structure feels too loose, especially when it's like a 2 hour plus film like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke, where it sort of starts feeling like, and I feel that a little bit in this movie too, where it's like painting a picture, and he starts on one side of the canvas, and then he forgets about that and moves on to the other side of the canvas, and eventually it all comes together. But it's sort of this weird mishmash of themes and ideas, and some of them are just, they're not developed, they're just hinted at, and the movie is just sort of like there's not really a ton of structure to something like Spirited Away.
Right.
It is sort of just like sitting in this world and these characters, and things are coming in and out of the story. And conversely, Porco Rosso has some of that, but Porco Rosso seems like one of the more streamlined Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Yes. The narrative is like pretty straightforward. And like I feel like the storytelling is like a little bit more in like a Western style, which I think is intentional because this is like set in Europe. It's like, and the whole aesthetic of the movie, like the animation style is still very clearly Japanese animation, but I feel like a lot of the aesthetic that he's going for is like very European. And so I feel like the story structure kind of being more recognizable to like a Western audience as like a animated film, right? Is part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, from what I understand, I think some of the loosey-goosiness kind of comes from the way his movies are made. I know that this one in particular is partially based off of a manga that he wrote.
Yeah.
But from what I understand of his workflow, everything's kind of happening at once, where he's written a little bit, and then that starts to be animated while he's still writing other parts of the movie, and other parts are being storyboarded, and it's all kind of cobbled together at the same time before there's a complete script, and I think you can definitely feel that in a lot of his movies.
Yeah. But I think it results in a vibe that, like, David, you were kind of alluding to, where it's like a lot of his movies just feel like, especially in the middle portion, it just feels like it turns into like you're just hanging out in the movie with the characters, and like there's not a lot of like propulsion forward in terms of like the plot. It's just kind of like, no, we're just kind of sitting here and talking, and it's vibes, you know, and we'll mull over some of the movie's themes. We'll spend some time getting to know the characters a little bit better. But it's like the third act finale is going to be mostly disconnected from like this middle portion where we're just kind of like chilling, you know? And I personally like love that. My favorite part of any Miyazaki movie is the part where everybody's just hanging out, you know? Once like like in Kiki's Delivery Service, like my least favorite part of that movie is the third act climax with the Zeppelin crash. Like I'm like, okay, this suddenly is like a different movie where we're doing this big action set piece, and I was like, I liked when she was just doing chores, like that was fun. You know? But yeah, I feel like this movie has like a similar balance, but it is more like plot driven than some of his other movies.
And I'm just not as familiar with Japanese anime and some of the Japanese storytelling traditions and how they structure things. So I always feel somewhat of an outsider when I'm watching a Miyazaki film, and maybe I just need to. I mean, the solution to that is to watch more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I found this movie about a man who has for some reason been turned into a pig and flies biplanes around and shoots down sea pirates and is really misogynistic and just has women throwing themselves at him throughout this entire movie, up to and including a 17-year-old child.
Well, you know.
Which we will talk about.
Oh, yeah.
We will talk about.
Yeah.
I found this movie the easiest to enter.
Yeah.
I thought you might.
Okay.
Is it because we're just three dudes built like Porco Rosso? I feel like all three of us, it's like, we're seeing ourselves represented on the screen a little bit.
Your words, not mine.
I mean, when he is...
Sorry, I didn't just meet you. That might have been unkind.
Well, when the movie opens with him at his hideout, sitting in a chair on the beach, drinking wine and listening to the radio.
Vibes are there from minute
like
one.
real Italian. I'm like,
yes.
This is my dream.
This is living.
Yeah, the opening, like, little vignette here with him just like asleep with a cinema magazine.
Yes.
By the way, he has like a movie magazine on his face and he's asleep in his like a beach lounge chair. He's like snoring, he's got wine, he's got cigarettes. It's just fucking, it's a whole ass vibe. I would love the life this man lives.
Did we watch the sub or the dub?
So this is what I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
ask.
So I watched the dub this time. I have seen both, and I have a couple notes about some differences in lines.
Okay, cool.
Not everything, but a few things I noticed.
Yeah. I watched, so this is like a little bit of a slight reveal. I watched the sub last night. I woke up this morning, and Matthew, the thing that you were talking about with this movie, with where you're like going back to it and being like, okay, I feel like I didn't get everything, and I want to mine this for more stuff. That happened to me immediately after watching it. The same thing. And so I woke up this morning and I was like, before we record, I'm going to watch it again. So I watched this movie twice in the last, 8 hours, 9 hours. And I watched the dub the second time. So I watched the sub the first time last night and the dub immediately before coming over here to record this. So I've seen both. There are some key differences that we'll probably want to bring up. Which one did you watch, David?
I watched the dub.
Yeah.
That was just the one that I had access to last night, and didn't want to bother hunting down a sub that hard because in the dub he's voiced by Michael Keaton.
Yeah. You mentioned that Porco Rosso, the character, is misogynistic, which is true and is a part of the movie.
Yes.
Would it surprise you to learn he is more misogynistic in the dub than the sub? Because he is.
Interesting.
Yes. They give Keaton more of the, like, women, meh, stuff than exists in the sub version.
Okay.
A little bit.
It's been long enough since I'd seen it that I wasn't sure.
I'm pretty sure the line about, building a plane isn't baking a cake, right? I'm pretty sure that's only in the dub. I don't think he says that in the sub. I think it's, like, translated to something else. So, yeah, it's interesting, because it does seem like his kind of misogyny seems, like, a little bit more abrasive and like harder to get past in the dub for me.
And very funny because the dub was done by Walt Disney Studios.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It was the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Walt Disney Studios
True
was
enough,
still...
yeah.
Well, it was supervised by John Lasseter.
Right.
So, like...
Yeah.
Yes, known guy who has never done anything problematic in relation to women, John Lasseter. Yeah.
I guess this was actually originally supposed to be just a little fun fact. This was commissioned as an in-flight movie for a Japanese airline.
That's fucking insane.
And then he expanded into a full-length feature, which is just kind of fun.
It's fucking crazy that there is like an alternate universe where like the only version of Porco Rosso that exists is like a 15-minute like short film for like a Japanese airline, and like nobody else ever sees it. It's also wild because Miyazaki was already established when this movie came out, so it's crazy that like this Japanese airline was like, hey, like I feel like that's the equivalent of like going to, I don't know, like Christopher Nolan or some shit, and being like, hey, do you want to like make an in-flight short film for American Airlines?
I got a pig with a biplane. That's what I have for you guys. What the fuck do you want? I don't know why Hayao Miyazaki is suddenly a man from Brooklyn. But
I mean, he is a grumpy old man.
That's how we
Grumpy
should do his impression if we talk as Miyazaki on this. I feel like that should just be canon to greatest movie ever made. Where it's like, yeah, it's me, Hayao Miyazaki.
I made Spirited Away, you motherfucker.
Anime was a mistake, which I do believe he said.
Anime was a mistake.
Is he talking about like television animation or just all?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he considers what he does separate to anime, if I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, stylistically, like visually, they are pretty different. Like the Studio Ghibli films don't look like television anime, right? Which, by the way, like we didn't really get into it, and I know we just started talking about the movie, but I am going to take us back for a second because you mentioned, David, that you are not particularly well versed in like Japanese animation or Japanese media in general.
Yeah.
I am also not. So like the Studio Ghibli stuff that I've seen is like most of what I've seen in my adult life. In like middle school and high school, I did have friends who were like really into anime and manga. So I saw some like Naruto and some like Inuyasha, Full Metal Alchemist, shit like that was on Adult Swim. But that's basically it. So like this, I'm also coming at Miyazaki and Porco Rosso, specifically for the purposes of this episode, as someone who is like kind of generally ignorant of like the cultural context that it exists in.
And for both of us, my brother and I growing up in the 90s, even the big Japanese animation that made it to the West and like blew up at the time, like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, we didn't watch those.
Yes, I also didn't watch Pokemon because my mom heard that news story where kids were having seizures from the one Porygon episode.
Yeah.
And she was like, sounds dangerous. I don't want my boys watching it.
Yeah.
So we did.
It was the violence for my mom.
Our mom didn't let us watch that or Dragon Ball Z because they were all about fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Was what I remember.
Which is like technically true, but also like the fighting is like silly and goofy.
And Dragon Ball Z is like, yeah, there's a fight every 5 episodes or something, and those 5 in between are like building up to the fight.
Right. Yeah.
So mostly
and then
it's
the fight
just
itself takes like 8 episodes.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But Matthew, you've seen more Japanese animation than I have.
Yeah, I've seen a bit more. Not as much as a lot of my friends. The whole Miyazaki watch I did a while ago was kind of my gateway into stuff. But I've seen Attack on Titan, which is a whole weird dumpster fire of its own. I don't know if I'm gonna list everything. I've seen a lot of the big ones. Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, stuff like that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So none of us are experts here, but you're coming at this as a little bit more of like a fan of the medium than potentially David and I are. Anyway, so yes, Porco Rosso is living the life. He lives on an abandoned island all by himself. He sleeps in a tent and chills in his beach chair all day. He gets like a call over his little radio, or no, it's on his phone.
Yeah, he has a
which
phone.
The second time I was watching it, I was like, they even do the legwork to show that like the phone cord like plugs into this little shack that he has built on this island. Because the first time I watched it, I was like, how's he getting phone calls in the fucking middle of the ocean where there's like nothing? But it's like, no, he has like a building with like a radio tower and shit. Like there's the level of detail here with everything is off the charts. But so he gets this phone call and it's like, oh, these pirates are attacking this boat. And he's a bounty hunter, so he's like taking the job or whatever. He hears that little girls are being kidnapped.
Yes, boat full of kids. Yes.
Yeah. So we meet the Mama Ayudo gang.
I would watch a 30-minute Saturday morning cartoon of these fuckers every week.
They're so good.
They're so good, and the voice actor for the main one in the English dub is Brad Garrett, who I know best from season 2 of Fargo, but he's a character actor.
Yes.
See him all over the place. Very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
And he is probably my favorite voice actor of the English dub.
Yes. So I like the boss of the Ayudo gang, the voice actor in the sub, but I do prefer the performance in the dub. It is one of the ones where I'm like, okay, the dub maybe outshines the sub here because it is a really hilarious performance.
Yeah. They're kidnapping these little girls. And they're just like, they immediately regret doing this.
I love that these little girls are so fucking psyched to be kidnapped by pirates. Like the pirates, like the pirate plane like rolls up on him, and they're like, "Oh, cool! Like seaplane pirates, rad!"
Yeah.
And then the pirates are like, "Okay, we're kidnapping you. We're holding you for ransom." And the girls are like, "Awesome! We get to meet real pirates.
Yeah, they're like,
I'm gonna go on a plane. This is amazing."
they're like picking them up one at a time. Are you pirates? Yeah. Are you kidnapping us?
Yeah.
And one of the pirates also, I don't remember the actor's name, is voiced by the voice of Patrick Starr, which is very distracting.
Oh, yeah. Bill Fagerbaki.
Yes, and he's doing a real like, "Okay, boss," thing, which is very funny. These girls being psyched about kidnapping is so funny. I love when Porco Rosso starts like attacking their plane. He shows up and he's like gonna save the girls. I love that we like cut to the inside of the plane. And the pirates are like having to juggle these like 15 tiny children and doing like a really poor job of it. Like these girls are just running amok in the plane. And the pirates are like, "Why did we have to take all 15 of them? Like this is..."
And then up on top, they're like playing around with the gun and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah. I love these guys so much. Every time these guys are on screen, I'm just like having the best time.
Yeah. The Mama Ayudo gang. Definitely the faction in this movie that I would like to join the most. Especially when we learn that they don't bathe regularly. I'm like, my brothers.
The other pirates want to surrender. But the head pirate is still just like wants to fight Porco Rosso.
Yeah, we're all going to hell tonight with Porco Rosso.
Yeah, he's got a machine gun and the gun jams, and then I guess they all surrender, and then now Porco has to deal with transporting 15 school children on his biplane.
Yes. Oh, I also like when he's like going to rescue the girls, the people on the boat where that was just robbed by the pirates. There's like all these sailors who like arrange themselves into an arrow.
Yes.
And are like, "You went that way." It's just so funny. It really, really made me laugh.
And we get some of the first taste of everybody being horny and loving Porco. He passes by this, like, I think it called like an air tourism plane, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's Porco!"
Yes. And then like these women are basically like, "Yoo-hoo, big boy!" And, and that's the first time we get the Porco Rosso thumbs up, which I fucking... Just something about this pig guy in these like aviator
He's
goggles.
so good to look at.
It's really good character design.
Yeah.
Right? And I love him doing the thumbs up at the tourist plane. Because it's like it clues you in, because he's sort of been sort of grumpy and cantankerous to this point in the movie, like, and he will continue to be. But I feel like him giving the tourists a little thumbs up and them all going wild is like the first indication that it's like, no, he's got like a soft spot. Like he truly does like care about people and stuff. He's not just like a curmudgeon or whatever.
How do you guys feel about Keaton as the voice?
So I don't know about you, Matthew, because you've also seen both.
Mm-hmm.
I love Keaton's voice performance. I think it's great. I kind of prefer the guy in the sub though, whose name I don't have in front of me, just because he's like, he's got like a deeper, like gruffer voice, and I feel like it just fits the character design better, and I feel like his actual like vocal delivery is like kind of on par with what Keaton's doing. So I like them both, but I'm gonna give the sub an edge on that one.
Yeah.
I could kind of go for either. I think Keaton, sometimes he leans a little more into like a kind of laziness.
Yeah.
Not like he's not giving a good performance, but just less of the gruffness and more just kind of tired.
Right. He like a little like he has like kind of a monotone that he like sinks into.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling too. I like Keaton, but he kind of feels a little bored.
Yeah.
At some points in the movie, and I also don't know like how much of that is like, you know, he has to run through these lines to match up with the voice or the mouth movements on the animation.
Yeah.
So he can't let these lines breathe or anything like that. But he's a really good fit for the character. I just wasn't super enamored with his performance, but there were a couple points where I was really into it.
Yeah.
Like whenever he gets to yell and be loud and cantankerous, that really works.
We'll talk about the scene much more later, but I also really like his delivery of the whole the heaven above the clouds bit. Like when he's narrating that whole bit, I was like, okay, like Keaton's like fucking nailing this.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah. So after he does this rescue, we go to the Hotel Adriano for the first time.
So briefly, if I may interrupt.
Yes, please do.
Perhaps this will be too easy. But I did have a note here that I made at some point during this sequence. So we'll play a little game where I'll read you the note, and you will tell me what you think made me write this down.
Okay. I love this.
The note is animation rules.
Ooh. Is it just like when the dogfight is starting and
There's a specific moment. It's not that.
Is it?
Shooting up the engine.
Nope, it's not that.
That happens later, right? Or no, the engine on the pirate plane.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many that it could be. Is it the one?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the one where like you're seeing the map and it's like the pirates? There's like the arrow where the pirates are going one way and the arrow where Porco Rosso is gonna go.
That's cool, but no,
Okay.
it is the sailors all making an arrow pointing in one
Oh,
direction.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Of all the things in that sequence, just like you have to animate people first of all, which
Yes.
we don't think of a lot because people do it all the time. But like, goddamn, animating a person has to be hard.
Yeah.
And then to have 15 of them like doing this wave in unison, like,
Yeah. And also like there are multiple, because like some of their faces are pointing away from like the quote unquote camera, right?
Mhm.
But then multiple of them are like looking up at Porco Rosso, so we see their faces.
Yeah.
So it's like you're animating like body movements for all of them, and then faces for a few of them, and then like some of them it's the top of their head, and some of
Yeah.
them it's the side. And,
Well, and
it's
there's
such an unnecessary thing.
yeah,
but-
and they're sort of like doing almost like at a sporting event doing the wave,
Yes.
where they're moving, so the arrow is also
Is
moving,
moving. Yeah,
with
yeah.
them. We'll talk about the animation in detail throughout this episode, but there are points in this movie where I feel like, obviously, like the animation on the characters is really good, but it's almost outshined by the backgrounds and some of the objects that he's animating.
Which I feel like is very much in keeping with some of Miyazaki's other films. It's like the characters are more simplistic in how they look compared to like the backgrounds, because they have to move and be in the whole movie. And then the backgrounds, like, because they can be static, are just like gorgeous works of art.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the character design is great too, but it's a lot simpler. Because it's like you don't want to have to replicate like 15 million lines every time you have to draw Porco Rosso. But yeah, like some of those backgrounds. First of all, Miyazaki is clearly obsessed with flight.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Just from all of the movies I've seen, flight is a component. All of his movies that I've seen, it's a major component of all of them.
I know that The Wind Rises was inspired by a real story of an aviator during World War II. And this, a lot of the seaplanes throughout the movie are either direct, like one-to-one translations of planes of that era, or in some sort of inspiration and amalgamation of different designs.
Yeah.
And they're all interesting and good and give this movie a lot of life and character.
Yeah, but the thing I was going to say is we were talking about the backgrounds, and in addition to his obsession with flight, it just seems like this motherfucker loves clouds.
Oh, yeah.
And in every Miyazaki movie that I've ever seen, I'm like, if heaven exists, I hope that it is full of Miyazaki clouds. Like, it is just like the best, one of my favorite things to look at with my eyeballs is Studio Ghibli clouds, and there's so much of it in this movie, and I was just like fucking delighted from beginning to end, because I was just like, I could look at these things forever. They look so amazing. Anyway, so then we go to the
Hotel Adriano, because Miyazaki loves a hotel that floats.
Yes.
As evidenced by this and Spirited Away,
Yeah.
and maybe another movie, but I definitely know based on these two.
And this movie turns into Casablanca for a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all the pirates are at a table together at the restaurant here, basically being like, what are we going to do about that scumbag Porco Rosso? And
We gotta do something about this fucking pig. Oh shit, he just walked in.
Yeah. I also love that, so the American is with them, Curtis.
Mhm.
And first of all, I fucking love that the villain in this movie is American.
Uh-huh.
He's the only American in the movie, and it's like he's the bad guy.
Well, he's an American who has delusions of being a Hollywood screenwriter and movie star and the president.
Yes, so that's a stab at Reagan, obviously.
Right.
Because this movie came out in 1992. I love all these pirates being like, oh, we can't like fucking let an American show us up. And the guy who's introducing him is like, no, it's fine, he's part Italian. But I love here that all the pirates very respectfully like quiet down to listen to Gina's song. And she just like does her little lounge act for a second. Like, we spend a little more time on it than you would expect from like a Western children's animated film, right? Where it's like, no, you're just kind of sitting in this animation and like watching her sing for like a little bit. And it's very beautiful, and they're all kind of like captivated by her. Everybody's in love with Gina, right?
And something that I do like about Curtis is something that I think happens pretty often in anime when they have an American character, which is, you know, almost all their characters in the dub have American accents. They're voiced by American actors. There are a couple here and there in this that sound more Italian. But to distinguish him, he is from Texas.
Yeah.
And that is a thing that happens where, from what I understand, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has, like, the American character who's, like, wearing an American flag bandana and talking with a Texas drawl, or, like, they always have a fucking cowboy hat or something like that. That is the understanding of America.
Yes. Which I love. I kind of love seeing, like, another culture's kind of stereotype of what Americans are like.
Yeah.
And I feel like they, you know, with Curtis, they do kind of nail it a little bit, where it's like he's very like driven by like success and fame, and you know, he just wants to be like the best and have the most recognition. And I'm like, yeah, that feels pretty true.
Yeah, he's a real hotshot. Do you guys know who voices him in the dub?
Yes.
Carrie Elways.
Carrie Elways.
Which I didn't realize until the credits.
No, I was about halfway through the movie, and then I was like, I gotta figure out who this fucking guy is.
Yeah.
And it's Carrie Elways.
There are points where you can tell, like, he's mostly doing like the Texas drawl. There's a couple times where I'm like, you can't hide that British accent, motherfucker. I heard that pop out.
He really can't, but you know what? This is the best I've heard from him. This is way better than him in Saw.
in Saw, his British accent is barely being restrained.
It's threatening to burst out at any moment.
Yeah.
And he's just gonna turn into fucking Wesley there in that bathroom.
Yeah. His American accent in Saw is like a leaky water balloon. It's just like spraying out British every which way.
I'm sure we'll talk about this more at some point, but Carrie Elwes is an actor who has earned you know, the universe's worth of goodwill based on one single role, which is the Wesley and the Princess Bride.
Correct. Yeah.
And he can make bad movies for the rest of his life
Yes.
and doing bad performances in those movies.
Yes.
Much like Saw.
Yes. He can, and he does.
And he does. And I'll still, every time I'll be like, I fucking love you, Carrie
Although
Elwes.
he rocks so hard in fucking Bram Stoker's Dracula. I always forget that he's like one of the suitors in that. He's like
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, he's like the kind of like fancy posh one of the suitors in that movie. Which also contains a hilarious depiction of like an American being, I'm from Texas and I got a big knife.
So Porco comes in and he is not wearing his hat, which I find important for two reasons. First of all, he has little piggy ears. that you do not see when he's wearing his hat. So presumably they're stuck up in there, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And second of all, he has just the cutest little doofy little haircut. I love this little tuft of hair on his head. I love it so much.
It's like almost a mohawk because his ears take up so much of his head that it is just kind of a strip of hair in the middle of his head. Yeah. And then it's like shaved at the back of his neck.
Yeah.
Which a lot of guys in this movie, like a lot of the seaplane pilots, have that haircut where it's like shaved in the back. And I was like, I wonder what that is. Because they put it in intentionally on like a lot of these characters. I don't know. But maybe so that the caps fit better or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do love him kind of walking in here while everybody's talking shit about him and just like immediately kind of like owning the place. Like everybody's like, oh, Porco Rosso.
Yeah.
And then like these journalists come over to him and are like, wow, you're so amazing, can we get a quote on the record or whatever? And the American comes up to kind of like talk some smack with him for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also love here Gina goes over to the pirate table while Curtis and Porco Rosso are kind of trading barbs. She goes over to their table and is like, hey boys, you're not starting any trouble in my place. And they're like, no, absolutely not, man. We all are head over heels in love with you.
Yes.
I love how much she owns all of these losers.
She talks to Porco for a bit. It's very, very clear that she wants to fuck the shit out of this pig.
You might say she wants to pork him.
Yeah. And she reveals that he was once human,
Mhm.
His real name is Marco. And it's sort of weird that like they never really explore how he became a pig. It's like it's hinted at that maybe it's because he left the Italians because he didn't take a side during the war.
I have thoughts, but we'll get to it.
I have thoughts too. Yes, we'll get to it. But yeah, for now, all you know is there is some kind of curse.
Yes.
Right? And he has a pig head as a result. We don't know. He doesn't have hooves. He has hands. And still stands upright. We never see a tail or anything.
Do we know what's going on with the toes?
We don't know what's going on. I don't think we ever see his toes. No,
I don't think
see,
so.
We don't see those tootsies, but we do see his hands, and they are 5-fingered. He has a thumb and everything. So the real question is, what does he have going on downstairs? You know what I'm saying?
And does he have a 30-minute pig orgasm?
Yes.
like if he and Gina ever have sex, is she gonna be just like lying there for a while?
There's some reason all the ladies love him.
That's it's because of that pig dick. It's that's why he was like asleep, passed out under that like cinema magazine at the beginning. He found some titties in his magazine and just had a fucking 30-minute pig orgasm after his jerk session. Just like fucking went to sleep.
All tuckered out.
Again, I just met you in person for the first time today, Matthew. So. I apologize.
No, I was going to go there before David did.
Yeah.
You guys have met before, but this is probably the most you guys have ever talked.
Oh yeah, that's true. We have met.
Yeah, but I mean,
we talked on Twitter, so
yeah,
not a lot.
But of course, things we're gonna eventually get to pig dick on this episode. Like that's,
I mean, it's inevitable. It's basically textual in the film that like all the ladies want that pig dick.
Yeah,
and Gina also mentioned she's been married to 3 different pilots who have all died.
That's a moment that I really, really like in both the sub and the dub. Just her little spiel about like. You know, like I've lost 3 husbands now. One in the war. I don't remember the middle one, and then the last one, like in Asia, and Marco, Porco Rosso, is like, oh, you've received news, like because she hadn't heard this guy just disappeared, and she was like, yeah, they found his remains, and it's like really like dark and sad, and she like I love her saying, you know, like I've been waiting for 3 years. And at this point, like I don't have any tears left, so like I'm like can't even cry about it, right? And then he like pours her a glass of wine and is like, yeah, all the good men die, right? And it's very like sad and very like deep, and it's just a very beautiful moment between the two of them that I like a lot, and I feel like makes a lot of this sets up a lot of the other kind of like heavy emotional stuff later in the movie, I think really well. Just this little exchange that they have about her kind of brushes with tragedy through the men that she's been married to.
Yeah, I mean, some of the anti-war stuff works really well for me. Again, we're alluding to the heaven scene, which we'll get to. But it does feel just so lightly sketched throughout the rest of this thing for me that I do want. It has the like I think you mentioned like the Saturday morning cartoon element, and then this anti-war, anti-fascist element that's sneaking in, and I wish we could bridge those two things a little bit better throughout the movie. But I guess we'll talk about it further. As we go on.
One of the things that's interesting to me about the movie, for sure.
So he he's gonna fly to Milan to get his plane repaired. Along the way, he runs into the American. He runs into Curtis and gets shot down.
Yeah.
And then he calls Gina after like making it back to shore and into a city.
Yes.
And he's still gonna go into Italy to get the plane fixed. And she calls him pig-headed, which seems fucked up. That seems very rude thing to call your friend who has turned into a pig.
I think that's a dub joke, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think she says pig-headed in the sub.
There's a couple pig-related jokes in the dub.
I think there are some in the sub too. I think people are like making pig puns, but I don't think it comes from Gina. I think notably because she's maybe a little bit more sensitive of his feelings. But she is being like, "You're so fucking stupid. There's like a warrant out for your arrest," and you know she's in love with him, so she doesn't want him to get killed by the fascist secret police.
There was a moment earlier that I think we skipped past where he's getting paid and then getting some repairs to his weapons. And he does say the banger, laws don't apply to pigs.
Yeah.
I also love...
For someone who's turned into a pig, he is handling it very well.
Oh, yeah.
I think he enjoys it.
I also love that this weapons manufacturer just has his kid working for him. He's like, oh yeah, the pig face guy is here for his huge Gatling gun. And this like 10-year-old boy is like, okay, Pop, here you go, mister. It's just very funny that it's the family business of creating weapons of war. Yeah. It's like a mom and pop fucking Raytheon.
Well, now we get like mom and pop Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
with Piccolo and his daughter Fio in Milan.
Yes.
He's gonna get his plane repaired, and get a new engine put on it. And Fio is Piccolo's 17-year-old daughter. And the first note that I have here is, does Porco want to fuck this child?
So the answer I think is definitively no. I don't think he does. This is present in some of Miyazaki's other films, and from what I understand and from what I've seen, also is sometimes a thing in Japanese animation where like a character who is an underage girl is sometimes sexualized by older male characters, right? And usually it's pretty light, like it is in this movie, where it's like, oh, hey, you're so cute, right? And like her grandfather is always telling Porco, like, hands off, don't touch my granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's like, he doesn't, you know? And it seems like he's like not creepy or weird about her at all. If anything, he kind of is a little bit like paternal to her, it seems like to me. But you know, it's impossible to watch this and not be like, that's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, and I think there's an element where like she seems kind of interested in him, even as he's trying to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a fantasy there of like, I'm being the bigger man, but the underage girls do want me though.
Right. Which might be a little problematic or whatever, but at the same time, I feel like it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the movie, because ultimately what you're left with kind of at the end of the movie is it's like, yeah, she was like this teenage girl who has a crush on this middle-aged man because they're like doing stuff together and she's working on a passion project with him or whatever, and he like is aware of it and doesn't act on it, right? And it's like, ultimately I can live with that, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not the worst.
One of either Piccolo or his daughter, I'm not sure which, does say don't be a pig when he's like, I don't want a child working on my plane, and I don't want a woman working on my plane.
Yes.
And I think in that case it is okay to call him a pig.
Yes.
That is less fucked up than saying pig-headed.
I think that also does happen in the sub. Like, I think the dialogue is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm not gonna fly a plane that's being built by a woman. Yeah. And Piccolo's like, shut the fuck up, man. Like, she's a better engineer than any of my sons. Like, I also love Fio. First of all, I just love Fio so much. I think she's a great character, but I love how like enthusiastic she is about like the work of like designing the plane and stuff. It's like, I don't know, Miyazaki loves like a young girl with passions. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I and then maybe this is just because I don't know if this is like a product of the dub over the sub, but I struggled a lot with Fio. I mean, there's a line that she has when he finally agrees to it the next morning, and they're like going over her ideas for the plane with the blueprints, where she's like, "Thanks for trusting me, even though I'm a woman."
Yes,
and it's like I don't like that. Feels really bad going down, honestly.
And earlier than that, when he hasn't agreed yet, she asks if he doesn't trust her because she's a woman or because she's young, and he says both. And then her response is, "I can understand that."
I feel this with some of Miyazaki's female characters, where and even someone like Hideo Kojima, with this sort of Japanese. I don't want to be a dick about this. I don't want to like say this is a definitive thing. Japanese culture, Japanese people are not a monolith,
right?
But some Japanese animation and Japanese media that makes it over to the West has this weird like treatment of its female characters, where they're simultaneously like maternal and loving and caring, and they also have to be childlike, and they also have to be sexual.
Yeah.
And it really rubs me the wrong way in the work that I've seen from Miyazaki so far, particularly with like Nausicaa, where like Miyazaki came out and said, we're like, Nausicaa's a mother figure to this village, so she has to have large breasts. And I'm like, okay. But
yeah.
it feels pretty egregious here, honestly, for me.
There's a definite dichotomy with him of like having very strong and well written female characters, and then also those things that you were mentioning.
And I will say, like, misogyny is not it's a global phenomenon, right? And so if you look at American films that received like a high degree of overseas success from 1992 when this movie was made, we probably weren't doing much better.
Yeah.
So it's like I get what you're saying. I also feel like it's like as Americans, we're a little bit in a glass house.
Sure.
Where it's like a lot of our directors have had problems with how they portray women.
It is a different flavor that's kind of...
Yeah, and I haven't heard a lot of people, and maybe I'm just like, I haven't heard it, but like, I haven't seen a lot of his fans bring it up as a criticism of his work.
It's part of the territory that I think is acknowledged, but maybe not criticized all that much.
Okay. Yeah. To me, though, it was like the biggest black mark on this movie, which I am going to be quite positive about overall. I did have a really good time with this, but that was just like that was a really big sticking point for me with this character. But I like later in the movie where she grows to like, she's obviously very passionate about her work, and stands up to the seaplane pirates and all that. I also love Piccolo. Piccolo's just a fun character too. I love him. He's fun, small little guy.
He's like the only one who kind of has an accent, I think.
Yeah.
He's like a little bit vaguely Italian.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this is my granddaughter.
I do want to back up for a moment for an important translation note. So when Porco's talking to Gina on the phone, at the end, I think in the dub, he just says, gotta fly, or something like that. In the sub, he does say, but a pig's gotta fly. And it feels like such a miss to not have... There's something about this movie, every little mention or pun or whatever about him being a pig just works so well for me, especially when it's coming from him. And he's like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm a pig.
Yeah, I'm a pig, motherfucker. I love the montage of them building the plane.
Yeah.
Where all of Piccolo's relatives show up to help, and they're all women. And again, they're all making fuck guys at Porco.
Yes. Yeah. So an interesting difference between the sub and the dub is the way the three old ladies are treated. Because in the dub, Piccolo is like, oh, the old hags are here. Oh, hope they don't get in the way too much. I'll give them an easy job. Is very much like kind of the vibe. In the sub, totally different vibe when those three old ladies show up. One of them is Marco's grandmother. He greets her as like grandma.
Yeah.
That's the one he hugs, right? And she's like, oh, you're like, have you been well or whatever? And they have like a nice little genuine interaction. And then in the dub, when Porco Rosso's like, you guys aren't going to be working on the plane, are you? And they're like, oh yeah. In the dub, they say, we need gambling money, which is pretty funny. But in the sub, they're like, we need money to like buy presents for our grandchildren. So like totally different vibe. And I like the sub so much better, where it like humanizes and like makes you empathize with these three older women.
Yeah.
And then in the dub, they're just like played as the butt of a joke. And I'm like, that feels very American to me.
Yeah,
it feels really American to make like a joke at the expense of elderly women.
Yeah, it's very these weird old crones.
Yeah.
Right.
And it makes sense for it does make sense for the characters, because in Italian culture, the grandparents are revered, and you look up to your elders. These three ladies look like fucking Strega Nona from the children's book, wise old women. And I do like how Porco treats them. Porco like does the kiss on the cheek and says hello and stuff like that. But that's funny that that's a difference between the sub and the dub.
It's just was very interesting to me how much kinder everyone is to like these elderly characters in the Japanese language version, where I was like, oh yeah, that's because they're from a culture where we actually give a shit about our old people instead of just like sticking them away in homes and like never thinking about them again, But yeah, I love the montage of the middle.
Yeah, and anytime we're building in doohickey, I'm locked in, man.
Yeah, he loves a doohickey. He loves a machine. That Miyazaki, and they sit down for a wonderful spaghetti dinner, and they pray, and Piccolo does pray for forgiveness for building a plane with women.
Yeah, which I actually kind of like. I kind of like that moment where Porco Rosso's just about to like start, pigging out, and he has.
I wonder if there's sausage in that spaghetti.
Really good. Okay, does he eat pork? We're in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
You got your prosciutto, you got your capicola, you got your fucking. Is this motherfucker eating pig?
These are good questions.
Pigs, I believe, are known to cannibalize. I think they will do that. I don't think they do it like as a matter of course, but I think in the right conditions, pigs in real life will eat other pigs. So I'm assuming it's not off the table for him. I want to know if he'll have some pepperoni pizza or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, incredible strain for Miyazaki to not have a scene where he's like presented with sausage and makes a joke out of it,
or bacon or something.
We need answers in Porco Rosso 2, which allegedly might even still happen.
I think
he has talked about.
It's been in the works.
It was rumored for a while. Yeah.
If it ever gets made, Hayao, if you're listening, we need to know if he eats pork or not. show us Porco Rosso's reaction to having a pork chop plop down in front of him. I want to know how that goes down.
And everyone, there's not even a joke in this movie of like him walking down the street and a human doing a double take, being like, "Is that a pig in an aviator outfit?"
No, because he's famous. Like
everyone knows him. It's so weird.
He walks in and they're like, "Oh yes, the guy with the pig face. Hello."
Yeah. Everyone loves him except for the pirates and himself. Everyone sees him and is like, "Hey, it's Porco! Holy shit!"
Yeah. Women love him. Other men like revere and idolize him. Right? Yeah. So yeah, only his enemies and himself.
What a fucking Chad.
Yeah, he is. I mean, like. He is just kind of like fucking walking around swinging dick through this entire movie. He looks awesome, by the way.
Yeah, there's a moment here where he's slouched up against a wall, smoking a cigarette, and he's just like not moving at all. Yeah. And it just, I love to look at it.
One of my favorite images of him is there's the one on the boat, which is great when he's taking the boat or taking the crashed plane to Milan, and he's just standing on the like front of the tugboat that picks him up. And like his coat's like flapping in the wind. That one's awesome. But my probably my favorite one is when he like doesn't have his big old jacket on and he's just in like the shirt and tie and like slacks, and he's outside during the like building the plane bit, smoking a cigarette by the river, and he looks up and sees Fio up in her office like working into the late hours of the night, and he kind of has a moment where he's like, "Oh, that kid always working away," and like flicks a cigarette into the river, and I was like. Just literally just like isolated this 10 seconds of just this pig smoking a cigarette by the river is like one of the most fucking rad visuals I've ever seen. He looks so fucking cool.
For me, it's just before he tells Theo the story, like the heaven story, and we're introduced to the scene by him like stacking bullets on a table that's lit by candlelight, and he's smoking a cigarette as he's getting the bullets out of the ammunition boxes and just stacking them up and like getting ready to fucking go to war. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando.
He does.
Just like ready to go kill Bennett. I was like, that's a cool fucking pig right there.
This is a movie that accomplishes very successfully a thing that a lot of movies with heavy cigarette smoking in them accomplish, which is like it just makes smoking look rad as fuck.
I didn't bring this up when I talked about Joker 2
a
couple weeks ago. Joker 2, you could shave 10 minutes off that movie if you just cut out all of the cigarette scenes. It gets to the point where they're trying to make smoking look so cool that it comes back around and just is like awful and boring and disgusting. Yeah, it's just every time they got a shot of Arthur in Arkham Asylum, like lighting up a cigarette in the dark, and the sad violin music is playing, and he smokes it, and he leans back and does his Joker thing. It happens so many times in that fucking movie.
Whereas Porco Rosso, anytime he lights up, I was like, oh, this gotta be so fucking good.
Classic.
Oh.
He's a classy man, that Porco.
Oh, I want that cigarette so bad.
He hates his women and he loves his cigarettes.
So, yeah, so he, at one point while they're building his plane, he goes to the movies, and we meet the old buddy from his war days, who in the dub is called Ferrari. I think his name's slightly different.
It's a Ferrarin in the sub. Voiced by Tom Kenny, Mr. SpongeBob, Mr. SquarePants.
So, I don't know if, Matthew, if you also have a note about the difference between the sub and the dub here. But
I think I know where you're going with this. Yes,
there's one that I do feel the need to call out, especially because David didn't watch the sub. Because in the dub, so Ferrari sits down next to him and is like, "You shouldn't be here. There's a warrant out for your arrest, right? The fascists wanna take you down."
Yeah.
And Ferrari starts listing the crimes that he's wanted for, and in the dub, it's like, oh, for deserting the army and for being disorderly or whatever. Like, they say some shit in the sub. Two of the things that he lists are decadence and pornography.
Oh,
and they don't elaborate on that. So it's like possession of pornography. Creation of, like, is he making porn? Which might answer some questions about what his dick looks like if we got more insight into this.
I mean, like, I don't know about, Italy in the 40s, but like nowadays, if there was a pig man making porn, that'd be the richest pig man in the world. Like, he'd be making money off that shit.
Yeah, his OnlyFans would be top 2% or whatever. Like, oh yeah, that guy with the pig head. I'll pay $19.99 a month to see what that hog do.
This is where we get I'd rather be a pig than a fascist.
Yeah. Yes.
Which
banger.
Yeah.
Good line.
Great line. Better a pig than a fascist. Agree. And so Ferrari is like warning him, and Porco Rosso is basically like, fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what I want.
The secret police are following him, and they're following him, and it's clear that he has to leave as soon as possible. Fio's going. I'm not sure. Is Fio's going with him because she's the engineer and she wants to make sure that the plane. Oh, by the way, a couple of things during the montage that I want to go back to. The engine that they have for the plane that says Ghibli on it.
Yes.
Is maybe my favorite thing in the movie. Like, just for visually, Miyazaki puts so much detail and love into this engine.
Yes.
It's beautiful to look at. And then the scene where they're testing it, and the whole shed's vibrating, there's wind blowing everywhere. Porco Rosso's skin is like shaking, and it's like they're yelling over the sound of the engine. Great scene.
It's so fucking good. One of my favorite shots in this entire movie is the one where it's like the wide shot of them in the barn, and the engine is in the foreground, and it looks huge, and it's like going and going and going, and then in like the kind of corner of the frame, it's like very small Porco Rosso and Piccolo together, and they're just like flapping, and like his ears are flapping, and they're like less detailed because they're like so tiny in the frame, but it's just like, it looks incredible. It's so rad. I fucking love the scene where they're testing the engine. So Fio goes with him for a couple reasons. One is because she wants this plane is her passion project. It's like a work of art to her, so she wants to make sure that it like succeeds, right? So she wants to see it through, and didn't have time to test it because the secret police were on their tail or whatever. So that's one reason, and then the other reason is to protect her grandfather and his business, because basically, like, now that the secret police have been tailing them, their cover story as to why they like built this dude's plane, who's wanted, is that he like forced them to.
Right.
And so he has to take Theo as a quote unquote hostage.
That's right.
So that the cops won't like shut down her grandfather's business. Yeah.
And one of my favorite shots in this movie is as they're escaping in the seaplane with like the fascists right on their tail. Is once they finally get it off the water, it's like a shot from behind of the plane flying over the countryside into the water, and the countryside just rolls by.
It's really cool. Also, like all the shit with this plane in the canals is like it's so.
I love the takeoff sequence. Yeah.
Like it was blowing my mind watching it both times, where I was like, "This is so many hours of work. This is like so detailed. The movement is incredible. Like all of the ways that the plane is moving, the way that the characters are moving inside the plane, the way the water is moving, like all of it. I'm like, this is miles ahead of like most Western animation I've ever seen.
Yeah, and there's a moment just before this when he's getting tailed by the secret police, and there's like a short kind of little chase, and just like seeing the perspective on the cars change, all 2D animation, and knowing it's the kind of shit that any studio today would be like, we're going to have a 3D model of that car that is not going to blend into the rest of the animation style, and it just looks so fucking good.
I also love the way that the movement of the propellers is done in the hand-drawn animation style, where like sometimes when it's like farther away, it's just kind of like a blur, like it's just kind of like a little scribble, but you get it. But then when you're like closer up to it, they make it move so convincingly. And I'm like, that must be so many frames of hand-drawn animation to make it look like the propeller is spinning like that. It's like, oh god, it's so good.
Studio Ghibli good at animation, turns out.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I guess so.
Who would have thought? You heard of these guys? Studio Ghibli?
Yeah,
you heard of these guys? They're really good at drawing cartoons.
In a world where so much of Western animation has just, and big studios have just fully embraced CG characters, 3D models, 3D environments, like a studio like Studio Ghibli is really a testament to what you can do with traditional animation.
Oh yeah, and how animation kind of is its own separate art form from like the art of cinematic movie making, like shooting things with a camera, right? It is like Studio Ghibli, I feel like, is the best argument for like this is kind of its own thing. It's still a movie, but it's like we're sort of doing a different type of art here. It's so good. So good. They get up to altitude, and there's like a beautiful moment. I like it better in the sub, where Theo is looking out of the cockpit. In the dub, I think she just says something like, "It's beautiful up here," and in the sub, she says, "The world is so beautiful," and then it's just like a shot from above the plane of this like gorgeously detailed, amazingly drawn landscape, and I'm like, yeah, like that. It feels like Miyazaki speaking directly to you, the audience, and being like, "The world is so beautiful. Look how beautiful the world is." Right?
Check this shit out.
Yeah. I love it.
The next thing I have here, there's a little bit more with Curtis and Gina, where Curtis talks about wanting to be a screenwriter, and is trying to convince Gina to go along with him.
So he sneaks into her private garden.
Yeah.
He just like is like, I'm gonna this woman has showed zero interest in me. I'm going to ambush her. I'm gonna force her to go on a date with me by invading her residence. So he hops a wall and is like, yes, he quotes his own screenplay at her, which is one of the worst moves I've ever seen. Just be like, "Hey babe, you like that line? I wrote it in my screenplay. Hollywood's reading it right now." And she is unimpressed.
Yes.
But I love that he's like, I love the moment where he like scoots closer to her, and she has like this tea set because she's like having tea in her garden, and when he scoots, he like knocks all of her like tea shit on the tray and like makes it clatter. He's just like so like tactless. And she's like, yeah, no, by the way, I'm waiting here to see if Porco Rosso will come here and sweep me off my feet.
Yeah.
I'm like waiting here to see what that hog do. Sorry, I can't stop. I can't stop saying that. And then he comes by and does some air tricks.
Yeah.
Which is also just like, I mean, all of the plane animation, like the flight animation in this is great.
Yeah.
This is a standout moment to me because it's just kind of so gentle and it leaves you so much time to kind of like soak in the details of the movement of the plane. I really like it.
Got some of those good clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, clouds look so fucking good in this
And like
movie.
the light reflecting off the shiny paint on the plane.
Yeah, there are a couple moments of that where it's someone had to think about that, right? That like at some point the light is going to catch just right and shine into the quote unquote camera. And yeah, these little moments, these little touches that you maybe don't think about the first time, but really make it.
Yeah, you need to the planes are stars just as much as the characters are, I think, and the movie does a really good job of designing the planes, making them instantly recognizable and distinct to the viewers, so you know that during these gorgeously rendered dogfight scenes, that like that's Porco Rosso right there.
Yeah.
And I mean my one of my favorite shots of the movie is from the heaven sequence, which we keep alluding to. We're not there yet. I just want to get there.
It's fine. We're gonna spend 40 minutes talking about it.
When all of the plane, like that wide shot of all of the planes converging on each other, and you can tell that like, oh no, they watched like dogfighting footage. They watched movies like The Dam Busters probably when making this movie to replicate how dogfights actually play out, and it's this chaotic ballet of all of these planes flying throughout the sky and shooting at each other and stuff like that. It's so good.
Yeah. So I think this is also where Gina has the flashback.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I did want to talk about that because it's a pretty quick little moment, but I love it so much. In my notes, I put love 3 times. I said, I love Gina's flashback. Because it gives you just enough backstory and just enough information about the two of them where you like get another layer of her feelings about him and their kind of history with each other without the movie over explaining and taking a big detour, because it's like, I don't need to see fucking Marco and Gina as kids for like 10 minutes. It gives you like 15 seconds of it. And it's like, they clearly were childhood friends because they seem very young in this flashback. And there's the moment where the wind kind of whips up her skirt and he's like looking back at her and he gets embarrassed.
Yeah.
So it's like clear that they were like childhood friends, and there's always been kind of some kind of like flirtation romance thing hinted at there that was like never realized. Right. And you just get that from like this wordless little vignette. And it's like, it's so genius.
Also, flying a plane as a child.
Yeah, well,
notably.
Yeah. Much like at the end of Kiki's Delivery Service, where it's like, oh yes, the triumphant ending of this film is a bunch of 9-year-olds going thousands of feet into the air. Actually, I think she's 13 in Kiki's Delivery Service. It doesn't matter. But I think that's the age that a witch has to go into the world and live on her own. Which is a crazy thing about the premise of that film. Like, you just have to go live on your own when you're 13 years old.
And start a delivery service?
Well, the delivery service is incidental. You have to, as a witch, you have to go to a town that doesn't have a witch yet and be a 13-year-old witch alone in a new city.
Hello, I'm the town witch.
Literally, that is exactly what happens in that movie. Is she goes to a town and she's like, hello, I am your town witch. As we all know, every town must have a witch. I am yours. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like everybody being nonplussed that a guy has a fucking pig head in this movie.
There's a part here where he goes to a cafe, and hears that like, he's the bounty hunting business for seaplane pirates is basically over because both sides of the war are recruiting them, so he wouldn't make any money after going after seaplane pirates.
Right.
And this is my favorite line in the movie, where there's some guy at the bar is talking to him or whatever, and then Porco Rosso's taking a drink and has a cigarette or whatever, and he goes, "Farewell to freedom in the Adriatic and days of wild abandon." And the fucking Yahoo goes, "What is that, Shakespeare?" And he goes, "No, it's Porco. See you later." And walks out. What a cool pig, man.
Good Keaton delivery on that line. Also, a dub exclusive joke.
Okay.
And a good one.
Yeah.
That is one of the moments where I'm like, okay, the dub threw in a good change there.
Yeah, in the sub, I think that the person says Byron instead of Shakespeare, and then he just says, "No, it's me."
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the delivery is better.
yeah.
Also in this scene, there's another sub versus dub difference that I simply must inform you of, David, because
I don't think I know this one.
so it struck me as incredibly funny, especially when I saw the dub. So in the dub version, when Porco Rosso is learning, because they're gassing up, they're getting gas, and he's like talking to the guys at the gas station, and there's these two old guys at a table in the gas station, just kind of like sitting and having drinks or whatever, and Porco Rosso is like talking with the guy at the counter, and the guys at this table start chiming in, and one of them is like, oh yeah, like sounds like you'll be out of a job soon or something. And in the dub, the other old guy chimes in with something that is also on topic, right? He's like, oh yeah, you'll have to find another line of work or some shit like that. In the sub version, the one guy chimes into the conversation, and then the other old guy, completely non sequitur and in a very funny vocal performance, goes, I want a cigarette! And that's why in the next shot of Porco Rosso, he takes out his cigarettes and throws them to that guy, which in the dub he does for no reason. But in the sub, it's because this like insane dementia-addled old man hanging out at this gas station is just not following the conversation and is like, hey pig, you got any smokes? It really tickled me, especially when I realized that they didn't include it in the dub, because I was like, yeah, because that moment is fucking insane. This guy just out of nowhere being like, hey! Hit me, pig! It's so fucking funny.
Damn, you know, it's the new year. Maybe I should finally take myself up on that New Year's resolution of starting smoking cigarettes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say start watching subbed anime.
While smoking
cigarettes. Yes, I could do that.
Yeah. It just really made me laugh. Yeah, I also like this little kid who comes out to bring the gas to the plane or whatever. And Fio's standing there bored, and this kid being like, "What the girl doing on a plane?" Just like this little snot-nosed little fucking gas station attendant. Funny little moment, but then they go back to Porco Rosso's like hideout.
Yeah, and the pirates ambush him by springing out of his tent like clowns in a clown car.
Yes.
Just there's. Just like they all spring out at once. They're gonna destroy the plane. I think. I
wonder how long, because there's like 50 dudes.
Yeah,
packed in a tiny tent. I wonder how long those guys were in there.
Man,
it's sweaty in there.
Man, you rip a fart in there, everyone's going to die.
Yeah,
it's you're gonna Dutch oven 50 people in that fucking tent.
And also, like, there's lots of remarks about how little these dudes bathe.
Yeah,
so it's just like, it fucking stinks in there.
Yeah. The head of the Mama Yuto gang threatens to cut Porco into bacon.
Yeah,
which is again very fucked up thing to say to a pig man.
It also did get me thinking, because we already talked about would Porco eat pig. We don't have an answer to that. It's unclear. I'm also wondering, would we eat this?
Justice, are you asking
Guys,
if we would hunt and kill Porco Rosso?
Would you eat Porco Rosso? Given the opportunity. Okay.
Yes, next question, please.
So the follow-up to that, I assume it's probably still going to be a yes, but the follow-up is, would you eat Porco Rosso if you were in the position that the people in this movie are in, where they, like, know him, have had conversations with him, and, like, respect him to a certain degree? Because the people who are threatening to do this, like, they're antagonistic towards him, but there is, like, kind of a degree of professional respect. It's a little bit like eating a coworker. Would you eat Porco Rosso if you knew him?
I would need the cover of anonymity. Like, if people know that I know Porco and suddenly he goes missing, that's a problem for me.
Yeah. So it's more the consequences that
Yes.
you're worried about, as opposed to any kind of moral reservations.
Mm-hmm.
I have no reservations about cutting into a conscious living pigman and eating his flesh. But the fact that it is Porco, and he is, obviously like a chauvinist and misogynistic and all that, but generally speaking, a character who I like and think is cool.
Yeah, kind of an all-around good guy. He's got his flaws.
Right.
But, yeah.
I don't know that I can, I would, get the butcher knife ready to hack me off a piece of pork belly or something, and then hear Michael Keaton's sultry tones exit him as he goes, "No, please don't."
I don't think he cares
David,
if he lives or dies.
How could you do this to me, man?
That's true. He does seem a little bit like he has a death wish. Like he's kind of like given up on the whole...
I think he'd be cool with it.
Yeah. I think, for me, it's a hard yes if I'm not the one who caused his demise. If the meat is just there, and I knew him, and even if he was a friend of mine, right, I'd still be like, I do love pork, though. You know, like it seems like a shame to waste it.
His plane is burning. He's been roasted perfectly.
Yeah.
You know what? Give me the cattle gun from No Country. I'm killing and eating this guy, no problem.
Would you stand still, please?
Porco, would you stand very still, please?
This has been Would We Eat This?
The
pirates.
The pirates, they
Theo girl bosses them out of this predicament.
Right.
In spectacular fashion. I love Theo. I think this whole bit is great. Where she's like, hey, you guys, like, this is no way for, like, civilized, classy seaplane pilots such as yourselves to be behaving. When back in my day, when Grandpa was telling me the stories of seaplane pilots, you guys had honor, right? You guys wouldn't murder each other on beaches. You would fight each other one-on-one, mano a mano in the air like real men.
Yeah.
And they're like, say, she's got a point.
which gets to something that I don't know the answer to, but I think this whole kind of like mythology in this building up of seaplane pirates, I think is kind of just a thing for the movie.
Yeah, totally.
There's not that much of a history of like the revered seaplane pirates of the Adriatic.
It's why I would think this would make a great... I would love a sequel from this, or again, love a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Is because I think this culture and these characters and all of these, all of these seaplanes, bounty hunting and robbing cruise ships, and this little hotel floating in the sea that's kind of the hub of this activity. Mm-hmm. It's just a really, really fun world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The High Priestess Pod watched most of this movie with me before she got too sleepy, as one is wont to do when watching a Studio Ghibli film late at night, and went to sleep. But she did compare it multiple times to Mad Max, where she was like, this is kind of like Mad Max with planes. And I was like, it's not as dystopian as Mad Max, but I got her point, right? Where you got your crews, right? Each of these pirate crews kind of has their own like visual aesthetic. Mm-hmm. You got like the Mama Ayudo guys who are all kind of jacked and bearded and have like their vibe. You have like the purple guys where the leader is like the guy with the eye patch. You have a couple of guys who look like Hitler for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, there's each of these little factions with their own aesthetic. They're all kind of like lawless criminals.
Oh no, not the Hitler gang.
Ooh, yeah, stay away from those guys.
If I'm remembering right, was also voiced by Tom Kenny. I might be wrong about that.
Yeah.
What's up with Tom Kenny? You get your money's worth.
When the Italian fascist government starts paying off pirates, they maybe have to pay the Hitler gang a little bit less. They're like, no, yeah, we'll do it for free. Things are going in a direction that we actually really approve of. So, So High Priestess Pod's observation was kind of like that. This is sort of like a lawless, like Wild West type world. On the seas and in the air, much like Mad Max. And I was like, thinking about what you were just saying about how like it would be interesting to see this world like expanded more. Mm-hmm. And I agree, because I feel like it kind of fits into that kind of like fantastical like sort of grounded, but sort of like sci-fi. Yeah.
It sort of reminded me of Legend of Zelda too.
Yeah.
Like Wind Waker.
Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like with all these,
the water.
all the I mean, the water's
wet.
beautiful. The water's beautiful in Wind Waker. The water's beautiful in Miyazaki films, obviously. But like all these little island communities that have sprung up. I don't know. Just a thought that I had.
Yeah.
So then Curtis shows up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing the fucking Ninja Warrior spider walk in this little crack in the cliff face, which is just
Like
fantastic.
like he's Tom Cruise climbing the Burj Khalifa.
Also, in the sub, there is a very confusing line from Porco Rosso when he's doing that, where the subtitle, the translation that they went with is like who put a path up there or something like that, and I'm like, there's no path. He's just wedged himself between rocks.
Yes.
But then he jumps from like 30 feet up in the air and like does like a little aerial routine and like lands, and I love him almost stumbling but not quite. He like catches it, and all the pirates kind of like politely applaud. It's not like woohoo, yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was impressive, nice. Yeah, and so then basically the whole thing is to settle this beef, Porco Rosso and Curtis are gonna fight each other in their planes in the air the next day, right? We're gonna fight tomorrow, and that'll settle everything. And if Porco Rosso wins, then Curtis will pay off all of his debt to get his plane fixed and everything. And if Curtis wins, he will marry a 17-year-old girl.
Because he saw her 3 seconds ago and was like, Gina, never mind.
It is.
I'm a male character interacting with a child in a Miyazaki film. I guess I gotta be a fucking creep about this.
It is very funny when Curtis is like I will always fight for the woman I love, or something. Like, he throws love out there, and I'm like, has she said literally any words to you yet?
It is funny because earlier when he's talking to Gina, she says something about like Americans love so much easier than people do over there,
right?
And yeah, to see that come up again.
Yeah, Americans are falling in love left and right, and she's like, we do it a little different over here. We have to like actually know each other first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then this is they all leave.
They climb back up
Yes.
the crevice,
which is very funny. And then this is like the setup for the scene that we've been dancing around this entire time,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because Fio and Porco Rosso are on the beach at night. She kind of wakes up in the night and sees him. The shot that you alluded to earlier, David, that's really rad, where he's like lining up the bullets by candlelight. And they're kind of talking back and forth a little bit. And what it leads to is basically he tells her the story of, because I think she just asks for a story, but she does also ask him how he became a pig, right? And he kind of gives a non-answer about that, but then he tells this story, which I think is connected to how he became a pig.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and also worth noting, when he's setting up the bullets at first, when she first looks at him, she sees him as a human.
Yes.
Yes.
She sees his human face, and then he turns and he's a pig again.
Yes.
Yeah. So he tells the story about how he was on a patrol. When he was a soldier, when he was like part of the Air Force, he was on a patrol. They got attacked, and there was like the worst dogfight he's ever been in, and like his friends, his squad mates got shot down, and he like woke up in this white light, and then like realized it was a cloud, and breached the cloud, and there was a land above the clouds where there's like a thing that looks like a contrail in the sky, but it's like all these planes flying together in like a river across the sky. And yeah, guys, like what do we think about this?
This is the best scene in the movie.
Right.
This is the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this so much. I wish there was more shit like this in the movie.
Yeah.
Because it sort of comes out of nowhere, where there's this movie's fun and funny and a little irreverent at times with like some of the jokes and some of the ways that like Porco treats people. And then suddenly we have this like beautiful meditation on death and the horrors of war, and as all of these planes start one by one coming up through the clouds and then ascending to join this line of planes in the sky that's basically heaven.
Yeah.
And it's really just like sincere and beautiful, and I don't know, it's just like it sort of came out of nowhere and threw me for a loop a bit, and I just wish that as much as there is like an anti-war sentiment in this movie and an anti-fascist sentiment, I wish it had just leaned into this a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it's kind of the most compelling thematic element of this movie, and it feels so lightly sketched other than this scene for me.
Yeah, I think that for me there's definitely supporting stuff elsewhere in the movie that you get. I feel like the conversation with Gina about her past husbands who have died, like, for me sets up this scene very well and stuff. But I do agree with you that I wish more of the movie was weird like this.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot by contrast of Spirited Away, where much more of Spirited Away is the tone that just this scene is in this movie, right? And so like I definitely prefer when this is like woven throughout the entire runtime, I think. But I do think it does accomplish its job in the movie like very, very well. And even though it is kind of like the one moment in the movie, I feel like it's powerful enough that it like sort of like carries all of the thematic stuff for me passively, right? Where it just like, it's like a transcendent moment.
Yeah.
One of the details I like the most about this, and I don't know exactly what to make of it other than like the surface level observation, the propellers on the planes that come up through the clouds of everyone who was killed in the dogfight are stationary. They're not spinning at all. And then the propeller on Marco's plane, because he's the one who like comes back from this, is very, very slowly rotating. It's not like spinning fast enough to like cause the plane to be flying, but it's just kind of like lazily going around and around. And everybody else's is at a dead stop. And I'm like, the surface level thing is like, oh, he had a near death experience. Like he almost died. And all of these other guys are like dead and their propellers are stopped, and his is like moving still a little bit, right? Which is kind of how Fio takes the story. Is she's like, oh, that was you almost died, but it wasn't your time yet, right? But like, I don't know, just something about that visual of him in this line of planes, and they start like ascending with these like stopped propellers, and he like can't join them, and his propeller is just like kind of slowly creaking around in a circle. Really got me, and I cried.
Oh
yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do a cry count guess on this one.
Okay.
But I don't know if we need to do we need to do the cry count every time? Do people get a value out of this?
Is it just the one?
It's just the one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good scene. It does come a little out of left field. I think this is a lot of the reason why I got that feeling of like there's something else here that I'm not getting.
Right.
Because there's this scene, and then there are just like these little moments sprinkled throughout. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, and I like it, and maybe it could be. I don't know. Maybe it could be better.
Yeah,
I think the movie is better for it.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't fully. I mean, I don't need it. I say fully commit to like being anti-war and anti-fascist. This is a movie for kids.
Right.
It doesn't need to be fucking come and see.
I would also say it is. I think a very solidly anti-war film. I think it wears that kind of proudly on its sleeve. But I get what you mean in like. It doesn't have as much like potency. That message doesn't have the same potency in the other scenes, right? Whereas here it's like very clearly like distilled into like.
There's moments where it's alluded to, like early in the movie. There's like a rally going on when Porco goes to get some ammunition from these guys or whatever. I feel like there was a way to weave this stuff throughout the movie a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah.
A detail that I really latched onto about this part is set during World War I, and it's the Italians fighting the Germans.
Yeah.
And we all know what happened to Italy and Germany during World War II.
Yeah.
And there's something very interesting about the way this movie decides to depict that, like, basically everyone in this dogfight has died, and all of them are ascending to heaven, even though they're on opposing sides of the conflict.
Yes.
And, the paths that their countries were heading down would lead to fascism and the destruction of cultures and livelihoods of so many people, and would come to be seen as the villains and the evil people of history. Where it is like, at the end of the day, the people who suffer on both sides of the war are the soldiers.
In the sub, Porco Rosso. So in the dub, he says that maybe that was heaven, and maybe what he's living now is hell. Right? Maybe life as a pig is hell. In the sub version, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that line is a little different, where he basically says, I don't know if that place that I visited was heaven or hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is very interesting, considering what you just mentioned, David, where it's like, are these brave young men who are sacrificing their lives for their country, right? Do those boys go to heaven, or do they go to hell? And that's kind of like a struggle that he's dealing with, right? Where he's like, I saw all of my friends die, and I don't know if they died heroes or if they died as the villains of history, right? Is sort of like a thing I think in the sub, that's sort of where my mind was going with it. And then in the dub, they switched up the line to make it more about his survivor's guilt, I think.
Yeah.
But I think I think there's like a thing with him where he's kind of like not just feeling guilty because they died and he survived, but also because he doesn't necessarily know if what they died doing was worth doing, right? If it was moral or not, right?
There's a degree of ambiguity to it that I do really like. I also wish there was a hair more specific at points.
Yeah.
Because the other interpretation I have of this is this movie has a love and a passion for aviation. Clearly Miyazaki does too.
Yeah.
And it is just like they are joining the pilots of history.
Right. Yeah.
And the dead pilots of history are just forever flying and circling the earth in this giant. And that's very poetic and beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
wow, let's go to heaven.
And nice. Yeah. Yeah.
It does seem like a lonely heaven, though. You're just in your cockpit of your own plane. I guess if you're an aviation enthusiast, maybe that's what you would like. But it's like, I don't know. Don't want to get out and stretch your legs ever. Fucking, I don't know. See what's going on with one of those other airline pilots.
Stop at the airport restaurant for a BLT.
At least grab a drink with one of those guys in the plane next to you. Like,
it is also eerie. Like, he calls out to his friend and he doesn't respond.
Yeah.
When he calls out to his friend, that's one of my favorite moments that in the whole scene is because this is the guy who is Gina's, I think, first husband who died in the war, right? And so he has just gotten married to Gina, and Porco Rosso is calling out to him as he's ascending with his propeller totally motionless, just kind of like levitating into the sky. And he says, like, no, you have to stay. I'll go in your place.
Yeah.
You have to stay. You just got married. You have to take care of Gina, right? And his friend just like doesn't hear him. And it is like eerie. And it's also just like it's so affecting to me that he's like trying to offer himself up in place of his friend, because he even says he was the best man at their wedding, right? So he's like really close to this guy, and he is trying to like bargain with fate or with God or whatever, and be like, he has a life that is worth living, and I don't, and I'll just lay down mine so that he can go back to his wife, right? And it doesn't happen. And Matthew, we said we were going to talk about
why he's a pig.
Yes.
So I'm curious if there's a sub and dub difference, because I don't remember. But after this scene, when he's talking to Fio, he says the line, "It makes me wish I'd never given up being human."
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I think that's consistent between both versions. Yes. So the way I interpreted this is basically this experience of seeing his friends die and feeling this enormous survivor's guilt, right? Has caused like self-loathing so strong that it has like magically transformed his physical appearance. It seems like it's not like an outside force like blighted him, right? It is that he hates himself so much. He views himself as less than human, right? Because he ran away and survived when his friends fought and died, right? And it's like, that's what turned him into a pig. Is he turned himself into a pig.
Yeah, I think so. And there's something else that comes up at the end of the movie that's kind of alluded to that we'll talk about. But I also think this kind of funnily goes back to everyone loves him except himself.
Yeah. Yep.
It's funny, it's a joke because he's a pig man and everyone likes him. But I also think that this ties into that where it is entirely a self-imposed view of himself, I guess.
Yeah. And I think we'll get to the end of the movie, but I think at the end, I feel like sort of that reading of it is reinforced.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like he is the one who has caused this, and the only one who can free him from this like quote unquote curse is himself. Yeah. Right. It's like he has to learn to view himself as the man that people see him as. Right. Because the only thing making him a pig is his own kind of perception of himself.
I think those are both really good interpretations, and I do see like the moment at the end where it appears that maybe he has changed back, and as an indication of an arc where he has to learn to accept and love other people and also love himself. The pig metaphor for me, there were a couple things. I didn't know if there was some sort of significance to pigs in Japanese culture that I wasn't aware of. And the other thing was, as an American, pig is a term often used to describe fascists and misogynists.
Right.
And this movie deals with both.
Right.
So there was something I read at some point, this was a while ago, but him being Porco Rosso, the red pig, having some connections to like a term used to like insult communists or something. I don't know how much to read into that because communism doesn't really come up in the movie, but
yeah.
And my read on like the red pig is just an allusion to the Red Baron from World War I.
Right.
That may be it too. Yeah.
Where red is just, and his red plane, red is just associated with being a flying ace. You know, you got Snoopy. Snoopy's the Red Baron too.
Curse you, Red Baron. Yes.
This movie is kind of just a whole Snoopy plotline. From a Peanut strip.
I mean, yeah, it is a guy who's an animal flying a plane.
I'm so sorry to do this. It did sound a lot like you just said peanuts.
It did sound like peanuts. Peanuts.
Just instead of the tweet, it's Charles Schultz, upworking. In the comic. In the comic strip studio, straight up writing it, and by writing it, I mean, let's just say, my peanuts.
That was worth the detour,
that was a deep cut.
It was worth the
I
detour.
really pulled that one out.
If you didn't understand that joke, go look at tweets from 2 years ago.
Yeah, why are you listening? How did you get here?
My peanuts. So he tells her this story and they have a little conversation. Fio's read on it is like, hey, like you were spared because you still had life to live. And he basically reinforces like that he just feels nothing but guilt and remorse for this. And then they go to do the match the next day.
Yeah.
So they meet up on an island. Mama Ayudo is hosting this this dogfight, and by hosting I mean throwing grenades at the audience
to get them to shut up. They're wearing suits. Suits with little bow ties.
They still have their goggles and everything, but
yeah.
My favorite character moment in this entire movie is the fact that the Mama Ayudo boss puts on like his adorable like candy striped suit for this event that he's hosting, but he still has his aviation cap and goggles on. It tells you everything you need to know about this guy.
Yeah,
really I love it so much.
Everyone in the world
Yeah.
is just showing up to watch these guys have a dogfight.
Yes, except Gina, who is taking telegrams.
Yeah.
And I like the guy on her seaplane being like, when are we going to get to go to the thing? Like, gotta wait around while she's on the phone.
One thing I forgot.
Yeah.
I think it's from the opening
Yeah.
dogfight is the cruise ship that they're the cruise ship that they're robbing has defense seaplanes.
Okay, yes. So this is not from the one where they kidnap the girls.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad we went back to this because I actually did also have notes about this. So there is a cruise ship earlier where basically between Porco Rosso doing the first rescue and then going to Milan, we get a little thing with Curtis joining the pirates.
Right.
And they attack that cruise ship. And there are two planes that like come out of this cruise ship and unfold like Transformers.
And there's this fun little cheery announcement of like, we're fully equipped with our own,
I also like that one of
Ladies
those
and gentlemen, we are under attack from seaplane pirates.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that one of those pilots is Captain Visconti, which is fun because we have a friend of the show with the same surname. Signor Visconti. Shout out to Signor Visconti, our own friend Adam. But yeah, it's very fun that they have like a full-on like cruise ship defense system that consists of like 2 fighter planes.
And they're also like famous flying aces that everyone's cheering for. Yeah, it's fun.
Another thing that I did want to, since we went back to that scene anyway, a thing that I like also around there that we skipped over is after Gina gets the news that like Porco Rosso has gone missing when he gets shot down by Curtis. She's like going out on a boat to look for him, and then like one of her like employees from the hotel like runs and is like, "Hey, we just got word from him," and she fucking leaps from this boat to this dock. She jumps like 10 feet. I'm like, damn, this lady should be in the fucking Olympics. Like,
doesn't say a word. The guy has to be like, hey, come back to the boat.
She just like bounds off this boat. It's awesome. Anyway, back to the finale.
Yes.
The dogfight starts. It's a whole thing where Porco Rosso is not shooting, and everybody's like, why isn't he shooting? And the Mama Ayudo boss is speculating that it's like, oh, he doesn't want to actually hit and kill Curtis. He just wants to shoot his engine and win the fight without actually harming him, which I think is like an important thing that is called out, especially after we see like Porco Rosso's kind of whole tragedy that turned him into a pig. It's like he's done killing. He doesn't want to be part of the cycle of violence anymore. Yeah. Right? And we haven't seen him like kill anyone in this entire movie because I think he can't handle it anymore, right? There was a time in his life when he was a soldier and he did a lot of killing, and it's like it's over.
Yeah.
Well, and he also there's a line earlier, I think, in the standoff with the pirates at the hideout, where he mentions that he has respect for seaplanes. Like he respects planes. So like destroying the engine is a thing that can be repaired.
Yes.
And fixed. He's not gonna just like shoot down a plane and potentially kill a pilot and destroy the plane.
Yeah, I like when Fio is doing her whole little monologue, and he kind of sticks up for her and is like, "Yeah, you should listen to her. She's the best seaplane engineer I've ever met." And she's like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, I never lie about seaplanes."
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. I like his little code. It's nice that he has a code.
Yeah. So they're fighting.
This dogfight's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about how like you like the middle part of Miyazaki movies where we're just hanging out and the climax sort of happens and it's like whatever. I really like this climax.
Don't get it twisted, because I vibe with the middle portion where not much is happening a lot, and that's why I kind of like it. But like this is still fucking incredible to look.
This climax is real cool.
It's really cool. I love when the vapor trails start happening around his wings.
And then someone's like, "Oh, look, vapor trails."
It's so rad. So Curtis is like kind of frustrated because he's noticing that Porco Rosso like it has the ability to shoot him and isn't. Eventually, like Porco Rosso does get in a position where he could hit Curtis's engine. He tries to shoot and his gun's jammed. And then Curtis gets behind him and tries to shoot. And he's out of ammo. And so then they just start throwing shit at each other.
So first Curtis pulls out a pistol and starts shooting at him with that. And then it turns to them just throwing shit. It's like the moment in like a John Wick or an action movie where the hero runs out of bullets and then just throws the gun at the guy. But it's like, what if we did that on planes? And I really like that.
One of my favorite things in any John Wick movie is when he runs out of bullets and just chucks the gun. He does that so many times. And I still think he could have done it more. If there was a cut where there was like 50% more gun throwing, I'd be down.
Well, we really need to watch The Raid, because The Raid is a movie that is like, they have it's a gunfight until everyone runs out of bullets, and then it becomes we're just beating the shit out of each other the rest of the movie.
That's rad as hell. We should talk about The Raid. I think we've gotten a request for that in our YouTube comments.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Anyway, but
yes, we are on YouTube.
I like them. Oh, yes.
We've had a handful of comments. We have a few comments on the Mad Max episode.
Yeah. And Ladyhawk, weirdly.
Oh, okay.
Someone was like, "This is literally my favorite movie," and I'm like, "Well,
yeah."
David didn't like it as much. Sorry about it.
Join us on the YouTubes.
Yeah, they throw shit at each other. Eventually, they just land.
Yes.
Yeah. They land, and then they start like a 7-round, 6-round, something like that, slugfest in the water. And this is so good.
It's so good.
By the end, they're both like missing teeth and black and blue and swollen.
Yep. They both end up looking like total shit. It's awesome.
It rocks.
Yeah. They just beat the ever-loving fuck out of each other. And I love that the whole time, Curtis is like, "You fucking don't get it, man. Every single woman in this movie wants to fuck your brains out." And Porco Rosso's like, "Shut up. No, they don't."
Yeah, interesting shit-talking strategy.
Yeah.
He's like, "Why are you trying to throw me off?
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to fuck me. I look like a pig."
Gina waits in her garden every day to see if you'll show up and propose to her.
Yeah, and he's like, "You liar.
Shut up."
Nobody wants to fuck me. That's why I look like this." So Gina eventually shows up. They basically fight each other to the point where both of them pass out in like the 7th round. And Gina shows up and she's like, "Yo, like the fascist Italian Air Force is coming. We might want to clear this whole thing out."
Yeah.
And she yells at Marco to get up, and he immediately does, which I love. That he's like, he's been fucking laid out. And then as soon as this girl's like, "Hey, you want to get out of here?" He's like, "Yep." Because he's in love with her too. I mean,
yeah.
And
that means he wins the fight. I guess.
Yeah,
he wins.
Basically, like we're at the point where both of them had been totally knocked out. So just whoever stands up first wins.
I do like Gina announcing to all of the civilians that have gathered around, like, "All right, everyone, the Italian fascists are coming,
Yes.
so let's all come back to the bar for drinks on the house."
Yes, yeah. It must be nice to live adjacent to fascism, but far enough away that you can just go to a different island where fascism isn't
You
happening.
can just escape it and have happy hour.
Yeah.
Right?
So they all fly off to Hotel Adriano, and
I really like Porco and Curtis being like, "All right, let's draw away these Italians."
Me too. And I like that Curtis is down for it, because Curtis is like the villain of the movie, but kind of crucially, he doesn't seem like that bad of a guy.
Yeah.
He's like pompous and conceited and a little bit of like a dork, right? But at the same time, it's like, he doesn't seem evil.
Yeah, no one in the movie is really evil. The pirates,
Which is a thing I really like about Miyazaki movies. I feel like pretty much all of his movies that I've seen don't have like a truly evil villain who you have to like defeat, right? It's like, no, there are people whose interests clash, right? And sometimes that even leads to violence. But it's like, at the end of the day, like, both of them are kind of sympathetic. I love that.
It seems like he has a lot of sympathy and empathy for the villain characters or the characters that other people in the movie characterize as villains. And later reveals that there's more to it. And they have this like sympathetic or streak to them that he reveals later in the movie.
Yeah, so they're both gonna fly off to lead the Air Force away so that everybody can enjoy their drinks. And this is where Curtis is like, "Hey, let me get a good look at your face. I think I just saw something."
Yeah. So they're turned away from camera, so we can't see. But,
but
the implication being that he looks human again.
And it could be, the movie leaves it open, right? It could be that Curtis came to a moment like the one that Theo did, where he is recognizing the humanity in Porco Rosso now and is seeing his human face for a brief moment like she did, or he's just fully like turned back.
Yeah.
And personally, like, because the interpretation is kind of up to the viewer, it doesn't really matter. But personally, what I kind of got from it is like, I kind of think he's just normal now. I kind of think that his sort of paternal relationship with Theo, him kind of helping her kind of selflessly and mentoring her to some degree, and also him like finding a new lease on life where like the bounty hunting thing is behind him and he has to kind of figure out what he's going to do next. It's like that has allowed him to kind of like forgive himself and embrace his humanity again, and he just looks like a guy now.
Yeah. Weirdly, I think it took me until this watch to kind of get that moment, because before this, when they're all leaving because the Air Force is coming, Porco puts Theo on is it Gina's plane or boat? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
To leave, and she's like, "No, I want to stay here and fight with you, and we're partners and stuff." And as they're leaving, she like gives him a kiss.
She does.
And so I think the first couple of times I saw this when he's walking away and a curse is like, "What's up with your face?" I thought it was just a joke about like, "Oh, he has lipstick on his face" or something.
Oh, okay. But also she does have a line earlier where she says like, maybe if I kiss you, like in the story of like the Frog Prince, you'll turn human again. So I think the kiss is part of it too, where sort of the movie is telling you like he had it in himself. He had the power in himself to turn back at any time, because this was sort of a self-imposed punishment. But it's like her giving him the kiss is kind of the impetus, right? It is a little bit the Frog Prince. I think it's kind of both things. I think it can be like a little bit of like a joke about, you know, the beautiful princess kisses the critter and he turns into a handsome prince or whatever. And also it's like the kind of the conclusion of his character.
Does he still have that pig dick?
That's what you gotta. That's the question of the hour, my friend. Is it like the thing in Young Frankenstein, where when they switch bodies and then switch back?
Yeah.
Gene Wilder retains the Frankenstein hog.
Yeah.
We'll never know. Another question that we need Hayao Miyazaki to answer in Porco Rosso too.
I also think pig dicks are sort of like a corkscrew.
I think so.
I thought there was a duck.
I think
is it both?
Do I want to Google this on my
Definitely
work computer?
duck.
Definitely Google
Duck for sure.
Google what does a pig dick look like?
Porco Rosso, Rule 34.
And we get a little outro thing from Theo here.
Yeah.
While I'm Googling pig dick, we can wrap up the rest of the
where
movie.
she's like, they stayed behind to draw away the fascists. I do wish this was like more of a scene. I wish we had a little bit more of that. You know, now she's the head of the Piccolo company, and she's designing new planes. The seaplane pirates still meet at the Hotel Adriano.
They're like old now.
Yeah,
and she's still friends with Gina, and she's keeping secret if Gina ever told Porco how she felt,
or if Porco ever showed up in her garden.
Yeah.
There is a shot of her flying her new plane over the hotel, and you see a red plane parked where the garden is.
Oh yeah, there is a little bit of a corkscrew on this thing. Yeah, look at that.
Glad to get that.
Yeah. A little bit of a bend there. Thinner than I expected.
Yeah.
Not a. It seems like
not
pigs.
girthy.
Yeah, it seems like pigs maybe have a little bit of a girth problem. Lengthy for sure.
That's how you use it.
But yeah, pretty thin. Like in this picture, I don't
Imagine
know
that thing wiggling up your
I don't know if
pussy.
this is a grown pig or not, because the rest of the pig isn't in the shot. It's just a close up of the penis. But it does appear that this penis is thinner than a human man's thumb.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. Maybe the corkscrew effect though will make up for some of the lack of girth there.
If anything, coming for 30 minutes is going to make up for everything.
I mean, it'll feel good for the pig, but I don't know if the lady's coming for 30 minutes. She might not be coming at all.
Yeah, maybe she values his pleasure.
That's true.
Yeah.
And, he can still do mouth stuff, hand stuff.
Snout stuff.
He's got fingers. Snout stuff. Porco Rosso does have a mouth on him, too. Big mouth on him.
So there are a few moments. He's mostly quiet, but there are those few moments where he like busts out laughing, and you see his like huge rows of teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I had to show you guys. We were talking about it. I had to know.
That's the end of the movie?
Yes.
That's Porco Rosso.
Porco Rosso.
Matthew, thanks for bringing this movie to us.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for hanging out before you return to grad school. We'll ask you, because you're our guest, is this the greatest movie ever made? And I don't have to explain what that means, because you've listened to half of the show, so...
That's right.
Yeah, decisions. So when I had the idea of this movie, I was like, this will be an interesting conversation. It's a weird movie that there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
And now you're like, that conversation wasn't interesting at all. These guys suck shit. Sorry.
It was like, we'll have a cool conversation, but it's not the greatest movie ever made. And then this third watch, I feel like there's something that clicks for me that didn't really in the other. Maybe it's just that I've seen it enough times that it's familiar enough to be kind of comforting revisiting the movie.
Yeah.
But I was enjoying a lot of the weirdness of it more than I had other times. People crawling up a cliff and everyone being in love with this pig and two guys just beating the shit out of each other in the water at the end. I something really clicked for me this watch, and I really enjoyed talking about it with you too. So I'm gonna say Porco Rosso is the greatest movie ever made.
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
David, is Porco Rosso the greatest movie ever made?
So, again, I have seen Nausicaa, Princess Mononoke, and Spirited Away, and now Porco Rosso. Is it fucked up if I kind of say that Porco Rosso is maybe my favorite Miyazaki movie I've seen so far?
Go for it, man.
I think that's a defensible position.
I think this movie is so much fun. It's so creative. It is visually gorgeous. I love the dogfighting. I love the world that he creates in this film. Where it stumbles for me is some of the themes. I love the anti-war stuff. I wish there was more of it. It feels like the movie sort of brings it up and then forgets about it at points. I wish some of the character arcs were a little bit more cleanly sketched out and just like clear to the audience, because I like Porco Rosso as a character. I just wish I wish I liked him a little bit more. I wish there was more stuff for me to latch onto. And I really struggle with Fio. I really struggle with the way Miyazaki chooses to depict this 17-year-old girl as all of the conflicting things about her character and the sexualization of her character really rubs me the wrong way. I really appreciate that this is like a clean get in and get out 90-minute movie with a really clearly defined 3-act structure. It almost feels like 3 episodes of a TV show.
Yeah.
A Saturday morning cartoon. I love that feeling that the movie gives me. I really enjoyed this movie, but I think there's enough holding it back for me ever so slightly that I can't say it's the greatest movie ever made.
All fair, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fair enough. Yeah. Is anybody going to ask me a fucking goddamn question on this podcast?
Hold on. So I'm actually going to tell you to shut up for 1 second, because one thing we skipped over in this little epilogue is there is a poster of Curtis, because he is now in Hollywood.
Yes.
There is it's classic sort of golden age Hollywood poster. It's him and a woman, the woman drawn like a human woman,
like photorealistic,
and him drawn just like in this fucked up little anime face.
I would love a replication of this poster printed out.
His little
I'd
mustache
hang this on a wall.
Sucks shit. It's such a terrible little mustache.
Well, I like that it's like an Errol Flynn sort of, or like Humphrey Bogart adventure movie, and there's just a dinosaur in the background. Yeah, I'd watch that movie.
Anyway, that reminds me, Justice.
Is
Porco Rosso the greatest movie ever made?
Is Porco Rosso the greatest movie ever
David,
made?
Matthew. So first of all, Matthew, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for bringing this movie. Really appreciate that. It was one that I had planned to watch soon anyway, because I kind of recently have had like a mini Miyazaki kick where I revisited Spirited Away, saw Kiki's Delivery Service for the first time, and just have been interested in delving into more of his films.
Cool.
And this one was a great one to add to my run, because there is a lot that I think this movie does extremely successfully. I think it is doing a lot of the things that I love the most about Miyazaki movies. Some of the stuff we've already talked about, like just the breathtakingly like gorgeous artwork. It's hard to overstate how good almost everything in this movie looks. And also kind of the patient, gentle storytelling, which is maybe less here than in something like Spirited Away, but I think still in the middle section you kind of do fall into that kind of like patient Miyazaki rhythm where it's like things are unfolding a little bit at a time, right? And you're giving everything a lot of room to breathe, and I always really enjoy that in his films. I also think that this is one of his funniest movies that I've seen. I think this movie's really funny. I think it's really and it is like very entertaining. It's not just like a compelling piece of art. It's also just like a good time at the movies, which I think, David, is why your position of like this potentially being your favorite Miyazaki that you've seen is like totally defensible, because I would say it's probably the most entertaining, just like pure fun Miyazaki movie that I have seen. And the things that I don't like about it are pretty few and far between. I also am a little weirded out by the treatment of Fio's character, mostly by the male characters in the movie. I feel like she, as a character in and of herself, I love. Like, I feel like she's great. The way that the men in the movie view her is weird and uncomfortable. And sometimes it's weird and uncomfortable in a way where you're like, oh yeah, men are like that. Like, men are pigs, right? And then sometimes it's like, oh, don't really know if we needed that, you know? So it's a mixed bag. But other than that, the first time I watched it, I was kind of struggling where I was like, I wish there was more of the weirdness throughout the entire movie. Kind of like you were talking about, David, where you wish that there was more of that pure thematic storytelling, like in the heaven sequence, throughout the film. And after the first watch, I kind of felt that way. And then the second watch, I was like, yeah, but it's also in other spots in the movie. It's just not as overt. It's a lot more subtle, right? Where it's like some of the anti-war stuff is like in just like that conversation between Gina and Porco Rosso. And like some of the anti-war stuff is like just when he goes to the bank and the teller is like, hey, by the way, do you want to buy a war bond? Right? And in the sub, he says, do I look human? Right? Basically being like, war is a human thing, and I have like separated myself from that. Right? And it's like, that's like, there's little moments like that sprinkled throughout that really reinforce kind of the anti-war message, the survivor's guilt thing with his character. I feel like it is more richly realized in the movie than I realized on the first watch. And watching it again, I was just like, oh yeah, there is a lot of like subtle interweaving of these little moments that kind of leave you with a thematic message that's greater than the sum of any of its individual parts, right? And the heaven sequence is sort of like the big, spectacular, grandiose moment of that, but it's supported by all of these other little things in the movie for me. And all that to say, I haven't seen a movie from Miyazaki yet that I've disliked. A lot of his movies would probably easily get the title from me. This one was maybe a little bit more hard won, but I am going to say that Porco Rosso is the greatest movie ever made.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I do think there's just enough there.
Yeah.
That you know, it's got the popcorn entertainment for kids, but there's a little sprinkle there for them to maybe ask questions. I guess.
It leaves you thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is a movie that you went back to over and over because it left you thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think I'm looking back on it, and I'm really interested to see what I would think about this the second time around, because it is weird and quirky, and there's all these little things in there that I can't quite make heads or tails of. Tails, pig. First time around. So also planes have tails too.
That too.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to returning to it, and also, frankly, like the other Miyazaki that I have seen. It's been a while since I've seen those movies. I've only seen them once. The most recent one I saw was Spirited Away. So, like, I don't know. But it was a fun movie. Love that pig guy. What a fun guy.
I do also just want to state for the record that I also think the treatment, Matthew, also think the treatment of Fio was strange and weird and uncomfortable. I didn't say it in my verdicts, but I just want that on
Making
the
sure
record.
you don't get canceled.
We're 3 for 3 on we're 3 for 3 on not thinking that 17-year-old girls are sex objects.
Yes.
Really, we're heroes if you think about it.
Yeah, please let me keep my ally card.
Because we're 3 adult white men, and we're just bravely saying that adult men should not want to fuck underage girls.
I think we all deserve to give ourselves a big healthy pat on the back. That's the show. Matthew, do you want to promote anything? Plug anything?
Oh, maybe. So I talked about Twitch earlier. Sometimes, not in a while. I stream on Twitch. Maybe I'll be getting back into it in the new year. There's only one way to find out, and that is to go to twitch.tv/Killapants, which is KILLAPANTZ, because I thought of that username when I was 12.
That was his RuneScape.
No, it was not.
I'm sorry.
You don't know shit about
that
me.
was your Xbox Live account. I'm sorry.
So I spelled that way because I was 12 when I thought of it, and I was very cool.
Hell yeah. I feel like Killapants has come back around. I feel like now that is actually kind of a cool name now. I feel like if you sit on Killapants for long enough, the equity like who comes back.
So yeah, maybe hopefully you can find me there. Mostly streaming older games. Been playing through Majora's Mask and stuff like that, and
Nice.
Just chilling and hanging out.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
All right.
That's the show.
That's the show. Do we know what we're talking about on the episode after this?
I know what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Should I just pick it?
Yeah, hit me. I don't give a shit.
Just as next week, which of course means a few weeks in the future because we're recording this out of order.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about. Guess what? It's January, and David's picking another no-budget action movie to talk about, and it is Jim Van Bebber's splatterpunk, scum-filled, action crime thriller, psychological drama, slice of exploitation trash entitled Deadbeat at Dawn.
Oh, I've seen you posting about this.
I watched this movie a few months ago, and I was like, I need to talk about this on the show.
Okay. I know nothing about it other than what I've seen you post on like Twitter and shit about it.
Yes.
So I'm excited to delve into Deadbeat at Dawn.
It is available on the world's greatest streaming service, Tubi.
Yes.
For
Fuck
free.
yeah.
So if you're listening to this episode, feel free to dip your toes into Deadbeat at Dawn and join us next week where we'll be talking about it.
Nice. Once again, thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Will you join us for our sign off? You know what it is.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a pleasure.
As always,
Later, dipshits! We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.